So we live in a tumultuous political climate at the moment, right? People are angry. Living standards are declining. They've been declining for a very long time. The people on the bottom rung of land have been bottom rung of the ladder, sorry, have been completely disenfranchised from the political arena. We have a political class that doesn't answer the issues that we have, and lots of issues that are happening on the bottom rung of the ladder in the UK at the moment. People have lost trust in the political class because of what's been going on due to the issues regarding, I don't know, things like what's happening after Britain leaving the European Union, the issues with what happens due to the pandemic, the issues that have happened due to, Boris Johnson being a liar and a racist and a homophobe, all these different things that have, that have, blemished his character as a human being, right? We have an oath at the highest level of political office, an entire group of MPs who are completely beholden to, whatever line that he draws, right? They're completely, specifically into continually aggrandizing his political energy, right? That's the thing that's been happening for a long time, and the discourse has become so toxic, right? The discourse has become incredibly, vicious in its nature over a lot of time, right? That's a thing that's consistently been getting worse and worse after, I don't know, 12 years of Tory government that's drastically reduced living standards for everyone apart from, people who are already have particularly good living standards already, right? That's continually been happening over time. This is also due to a rise in factional anti immigrant sentiment. There's a lot of things that's happened. There's a lot of you know, West versus East culture war that's been brewing in the wake of things such as the issues with terrorism in the early 2000s, the issue with immigration causing community discohesion over a long time because of poor policy to do with the way people are settled and the way people, especially in areas where immigration is present but not too high. They don't have the chance to be able to integrate in a long time. So that's created cultural discohesion a lot of the time because people are not getting properly acquainted with whatever kind of new immigrant demographic has moved in, right? And that's all been exacerbated by a media class who are explicitly trying to tell you that every Muslim who enters the country is a potential terrorist, or the refugees from all the wars we've started in the Middle East. These are all economic migrants because they're all men. You can't see women and children, right? These are all men trying to just come into our country and steal our jobs and also be on benefits simultaneously, right? That demonization's been happening forever. There's got this kind of wave of nationalist sentiment that's caused a lot of issues too, right? For both sides of these issues, because one of them makes people angry with politicians on the left, and another of these things makes these people angry with politicians on the right. And this has created a very ton of toxic political discourse at the moment, which has led to you know, a lot of vitriol online. Now, some of that vitriol has been thrown at MPs. A lot of MPs have been, the back end, the receiving end of a lot of the vitriol online, because these people who are, these people who are in charge, people who vote on the laws, or in some cases even write the laws, they staff the committees that deal with the issues that affect people's everyday lives. Because something that a politician does can have a profound, wider effect on society, as we have seen over the last 12 years, especially, and obviously previously with policies that were passed in the government, in the Labour government before that as well. Whether they were good or bad, it depends, right? There were some good things and some bad things that they did. And what has happened now, there is going to be a Channel 4 program, I think it might be airing literally right now, and a clip was circulating Twitter. Essentially, Kim Ledbetter, the MP who won the by-election after the murder of an MP, right? An MP was killed. Joe Cox was MP was killed by a right-wing white nationalist, essentially, who killed her for being too supportive of immigrants, of non-white people, right? He screamed Britain first as he killed her. And that's, an exacerbation of white nationalist terrorism against an MP for the crime of wanting to be nice to brown people, right? That's how far things have gone. This MP, Kim Ledbetter, was the person who won the by-election in that seat in which the MP was killed. Who's done this documentary that she's done about abuse and threats aimed at MPs, right? Now, I think that there is a pretty wide gap between abuse and threats that are dealt to MPs for the crime of thinking immigration should be a little easier and we should be a little bit nicer to refugees who are fleeing the conflicts that we started, right? Getting angry with those MPs is slightly different to being getting angry at MPs who vote for policies that, cause deprivation in our country, who cause the gap between the rich and the poor to widen, who cause the living standards in the country to drop, right? I think there's a bit of a difference between these kind of people. I think you can draw a difference. And also, it's elicited kind of different reactions. But I've watched this clip before. We're going to watch that now. Batley and Spence, that's the one. Thank you for reminding me, Sensibedium. We're going to watch this clip now, and I want people to think about what the difference in reaction to these things might be. Let's have a look.
There would be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of offensive tweets. Just shut up, you know, you're a murderer, you're Tory scum. You don't know what you're talking about, pipe down.
Now, misogynist slurs notwithstanding, this is a Tory MP, right? This is Heidi Allen, the one who moves the fucking Change UK, right? One of those scroats, right? And she's the one on here saying, people are online calling me Tory scum and telling me to shut up and I don't know what I'm talking about and I'm a murderer. And I'm just like, it's not a death threat though, is it? It's not you actually literally being killed by a white nationalist terrorist, right? It's not like, I'm not saying that these are admirable things that people are doing, but it might be worth at some point looking at this woman's voting record, right? Not going to spoil anything for later, but let's just put a pin in that for now.
I cannot remember a week now when there hasn't been a serious incident being investigated by the police.
We have morbid conversations of God, if I...
Jess Phillips. I wonder if she said anything that could be construed as a violent threat at any point. I wonder if that's a thing that she's done. Again, we'll put a pin in that for now as well. We'll revisit that later too.
I've lost my life.
Coming into Parliament with a fresh pair of eyes, I've been able to see that some of this stuff is not acceptable. We should not have anybody who is...
Yeah, I feel like all these complaints are, I went online and forgot it's not real life, where I surround myself with all of yes men who agree with me. You're absolutely right, it's correct. And this is the same kind of thing that the liberal kind of commentariat have had when they've got onto Twitter, where they're like, I was writing articles for The Guardian, and I went online and people were disagreeing with me in the replies. I can't believe that my divine right to a platform is being compromised by the lowly people of the internet who, with their dissenting opinions that I've never had to deal with in the world before online social media, right? How dare the rabble come to question my authority on this incredible issue?
Accepting, whether it's horrible emails, whether it's people being shouted at in the street, accepting that as part of their job.
Yeah, exactly, right? So put her on Have I Got News For You after all that.
I've not dealt with her murder. I can say it, but I haven't dealt with it at all. But it would also be wrong to say that I'm not angry. I'm extremely angry.
Like, that's a thing that I don't, like, we can all agree, no matter what political persuasion that you are, that death threats, threats of physical violence are completely unacceptable, right? That is the line, as far as I'm concerned. That's the line, right? But there is a huge, huge difference between threats of violence and someone on Twitter telling you to shut up. I mean, come on. Like, you should have known when you got into this you can at least get some pushback for things you advocated for, no matter which, again, side of the political aisle that you're on, right? Like, there's plenty of things that there's plenty of things people will tell you, and I think saying you're Tory scum or you should shut up, I mean, again, misogynist slurs notwithstanding, I don't think that's really something that is a substantial issue compared to threats of physical violence or threats of or death threats or whatever. Or things like that.
So one of the first jobs in the morning is to go through all of the emails that I've received overnight and delete the ones that are just abusive. This morning we've got an email that is commenting on the size of my backside, which I'm not sure is contributing an awful amount to the political debate.
I don't dislike Caroline Noakes that much. I think she's one of the more tolerable Tory MPs. It might be because she's explicitly pro-trans and the TERFs fucking hate her for it, which, gives her a little tick in my book. And again, like, nobody should be going online and treating women just as something with which you can just send veiled messages of misogynist nature, right? I don't think that's really acceptable. But someone commenting inside your ass, you can just delete the email. You can just not look, right? That's not the same as like a death threat. But again, I'm sure she does get death threats too.
I've had to refer several emails this morning to the police. I hope you get hit by a bus and your mother for giving birth to a creature like you.
This morning my Oldham office had one of its windows smashed in.
I got my first death threat in 2017, and I remember looking at it and thinking, I really can't quite believe what I've just seen.
I remember coming home from London one night, 2 police officers in the lounge, 2 police officers in the garden at the back, 2 outside the front door, and there's a helicopter out trying to find him. And it turned out he was 200 yards away, hiding in long grass. He was an ex-Marine or para, I think. And that was close. I freaked out. But that type of thing, unfortunately, became routine, and it certainly wasn't unique to me. This was, unfortunately, the lives that we were all living. I think it's a dreadful shame. It's a dreadful shame. I wish I'd had more. Because I love that job. I've spoken about it for quite a while.
I'm sure you love being paid £80,000 a year plus all of your benefits paid for.
Oh, but I do miss it. But I'm not a robot, so I had to look after myself. But it's a dreadful shame because I do think I could have made a difference.
I think
So-
important work is...
On that note, she could have made a little bit of difference. Well, actually, I'm of the opinion she made plenty of difference. She made plenty of difference for the lives of poor people when she was a Conservative MP. She did plenty of things, like, for example, let's have a look at her voter record, where she reduced benefits for people on the bottom rung of the ladder. She voted for the bedroom tax as well. She voted against paying higher benefits for those over longer periods who are able to work due to illness or disability. She voted against plenty of things that made the poorest and most destitute people in our country even worse off. She voted against the right to remain for EU nationals. She voted against investigations into the illegal Iraq war. She voted against measures to prevent climate change that will lead to the death of our planet. And she consistently voted to mass surveil us as well. She did make plenty of difference. Unfortunately, all of those differences were bad things. Which comes down to the key issue with everything that's being said here, right? Is that we're all talking about what's happening, right? And plenty of it is unacceptable. As was said there, things like threats of physical violence, people stalking you outside your house, threats of sexual violence and sexual abuse from people. These are all repugnant things that should be entirely discredited, right? Should be entirely denounced, absolutely, by everybody on every side of the political spectrum, right? But you've got to ask why. You've got to ask, why are people so riled up? It's not because, it's not just because people just, are getting some kind of vicarious thrill at making MPs feel bad. It might also be because people are angry. People are angry because of the decisions that politicians like these people make. Like things such as taking the people who are the worst off in society and plunging them into destitution. Right? Estimates say that up to 130,000 people died because of the policies of austerity. That's social murder, that is, right? If you kill people by fiscal policy, right? That's social murder. So at the very least, if we're being charitable, we could call somebody like, I don't know, Heidi Allen or Peter Bone, who voted for these things, as being accessories to murder at the very least, right? And you think, well, hang on a minute, if we, by the policies that we implemented, put people into destitution, maybe people are right that I am a murderer, which is literally what she said. People say, oh, you're a murderer. I'm like, well, what did your policies do, right? If your policies caused people to die early, then you killed them. That's a thing that you did, right? And I don't think that, that is in any way equivalent to someone calling you a bitch on the Bird app. Whilst I do not condone the use of misogynistic slurs, I also don't think that it's particularly relevant in the grand scheme of things, Heidi, with regards to the things that you did whilst you're in public office. You chose to be a member of the Conservative Party. Oh, I was just obeying the whip. And I'm just like, if you didn't want to vote for things that are causing social murder, you should have left the party. You should have defied the whip, right? I mean, she did leave the party eventually to another group of people, just because, and that wasn't even over the issue of things like reducing benefits or crippling the disabled, culling the disabled even, as part of the Conservative policy platform of austerity for a decade, right? It was only to do with fucking Brexit. It was because she didn't want Brexit to happen. She was a Remainer. And that's why she had to leave the Conservative Party, because she couldn't back the idea that we had to have a hard Brexit. That was why that was her breaking point for leaving the ranks of the Conservative Party. It wasn't for all the poor people that died, because she was elected in 2015. She stood in 2015 after a lot of people had died already. She looked at 5 years of Conservative Party policy that sent poor people to their graves and said, I would like to be part of that. She joined that party at that time to stand as a candidate. She was probably a councillor before as well. And then she continued until 2019, until Brexit happened, and that was her tipping point for leaving the Tory party. Nothing to do with what they did to the worst off people in this country, the way in which they gutted the welfare system to push people to the point at which they actually literally died because they may have missed like one job centre appointment, right? She wanted part of that. The only thing that happened that was the kind of watershed moment that made her want to leave the Conservative Party was there being a disagreement on Brexit. And now she's crying to us about things that people say to her on the internet. She can honestly, quite frankly, she needs to get a little bit of perspective, right? Okay? People say, "Oh, you're a murderer, you're a Tory scum," and I'm just like, nah, mate. Like, if the things that you did when you were in government, right, the things that you voted for, and the policy platforms that you supported, we quite frankly deserve that stuff. She obviously didn't deserve to be stalked or deserve death threats or threats of abuse, anything like that. But people on Twitter calling you a murderer or scum, fucking, deal with it. Quite frankly, you've made your bed, now fucking lie in it. I'm sorry. There are you did actions that had terrible consequences for other people, and you're now receiving repercussions because of it. Like, that's the simple fact of the matter, right? People don't engage in civil unrest, societal unrest, unless there are problems, right? It's become an increasingly. Why do you think it's become an increasing issue in the last decade or so? Maybe it's because the Conservatives have been in power. That might be an issue that's led to the fact that people are upset and are taking out on the elected representatives that's supposed to represent them. Our taxes pay their bills. Our taxes pay for them to try and write the laws for us to make our lives better, and they repay us by culling the disabled. Fuck you. Actually, fuck you. Trying to cry crocodile tears to us over the things that you did to this country. Pull the other one, mate. Come on. Especially not from people like Jess Phillips, as you quite rightly said in Sensibilium, who said things like, there we go, I told Dan Abbott to fuck off or whatever, so that's not a particular issue, but then she said she literally threatened to kill Jeremy Corbyn by saying, I would stab him in the front, not in the back. And she says, saying, oh, people are mean to me on the Bird app. And I'm like, you literally did a veiled death threat to the leader of the party that you're a part of. Like, and then the fact that Diane Abbott isn't even featured in this when it's been shown, like studies have shown that she sees more abuse than any other member of parliament. And she's not shown there? It seems like it's only candidates in the political centre and the political right that we're allowed to feel sorry for. Because the media landscape just exists to demonise anybody left of fucking Pinochet at this point. Right? Yeah, now IDS is apparently the moderate Tory, despite the fact that he was the architect. He was the architect of the policy platform that caused those people to die. If anyone is the most to blame for all of those people dying, it's fucking Ian Duncan Smith, right? Yeah, literally, Jess Phillips on camera laughing at the fact that Labour had lost the election and the poor people in this country were going to be subjected to an even worse government for the next 5 years. What an absolute helmet! What a melt! What a fucking rancid little turd she is. Like, if you want to do a documentary about death threats that MPs are getting from members of the public, you go ahead. 2 MPs have been killed, right? In the last 5 years. 2 MPs have lost their lives due to politically motivated violence, and that is unacceptable. Obviously, it's unacceptable, right? That's murder. It's incredibly distressing that that's happened, right? But that's not comparable to people tweeting mean things at you on the Bird app. And it's all downwind from societal sickness that has happened because of policies that have been pushed, for decades now by a consistent neoliberal platform that treats people just like fucking currency, treats people like commodities. And people, all the societal kind of fabric that held us together, the community that held society together has broken down. And it's only the fault of these people. And they continue to push policies that make people worse and worse off and wonder why there's vitriol. Like, come on, just put 2 and 2 together, guys. It's not exactly difficult to understand the things that have led us to this point, right? It's not like Jeremy Corbyn was the one being used as target practice by the literal fucking army. I think that's a little bit different to being called Tory scum on the Bird app, right? It's just, I think these people have spent too long thinking that they're above criticism, thinking that they have a divine right to rule other people. I mean, the public school educated literally do. Public school kids, they genuinely like believe that they're supposed to have like they're supposed to be in parliament. Their natural position is to be in the hierarchy with which they decide what's best for the people below them. Right? I'm not saying that specifically applies to anyone in that video, but there's a pretty there's a pretty big kind of cadre of MPs who do believe that that's what they have a they're entitled to be an MP. They're entitled to be in government. They are, the people who Aristotle would have said are the philosophers that should be given the right to rule. Right? They certainly internally, if not outwardly, believe that. And no, they work for us. We pay their bills. They're here to represent us at the end of the day. And if they don't do a good job of that, they should, quite frankly, any mean tweets that they get are quite frankly deserved as far as I'm concerned. The people should not fear the government. The government should fear the people at the end of the day, right? Because, we elect them. They have the privilege to serve us as our elected representatives, right? And if they're not doing right by us, we should, quite frankly, have the right to criticize them as long as they do continually do policies and enact policies that make our lives worse. It's as simple as that. It's literally as simple as that. Right? Maybe what we actually need is a return of a society that engenders a level of community within us. We need to change to a society where we treat other people with comradeship rather than with antagonism, where we treat the society not as a game which we have to win under neoliberalism, a society in which a rising tide raises all ships. Maybe that's what we need to do, because it's clear to me, obviously I'm a Marxist. I believe that the base affects the superstructure, and that's what we're seeing right now. We are seeing essentially the societal ruin, the societal vandalism that comes from successive neoliberal governments and regimes in power who continually pit human beings against each other to turn life into a competition where people feel aggrieved. We have a societal sickness where people on the bottom rung of the ladder on one end of Tottenham Court Road, and then at the other end, there's people living in £1 million mansions. Like, we have this broadening of a gap of inequality that makes where some people are literally destitute in the 7th biggest economy on the world. The people who can't afford to heat their homes, people who can't afford to put food on their kids' tables, people who, as we've seen from news earlier today, their kids are getting food poisoning because they're trying to turn the fridge off at night to save energy. And MPs think they have it hard because people are mean to them on Twitter. Give me a fucking break. Give me a literal break, right? I'm sorry. The level to which they're just so kind of extricated from the lives people actually live in this society, and we're supposed to believe that this kind of civility politics nonsense, because clearly the civility politics hasn't worked for ages. We've not got anything that we need. People are continuing to get worse and worse off. We're the first generation to be worse off than our parents, and it's only getting worse, and things are only going further away from each other. Maybe, that needs to change. Maybe, if we fix the fabric of our society from the base, people will not be so aggrieved to need to want to send, abusive messages to people on Twitter, let alone engage in death threats and things like that. Because the political campism that's been kind of engendered through the way in which the media narratives get spun, right, are the us versus them narratives, right? You have to be against the immigrants or against the scroungers or against X, Y, Z, this and that. That's only going to create more enemies of people and create more societal discohesion. And this is the result. %, Alstrich. I mean, I'm not an anarchist, right? I definitely do believe in a state existing, right? I believe that, as long as we have markets around. I mean, I guess I share some ideological understandings with anarchists. I mean, I'm mostly a pragmatic Marxist, I'd call myself, right? And any good change is that creates utility overall, I will be in favour of, right? If you can build me an anarchist society that works, I'll live in it, right? But my pragmatic vision of the future is a socialist society in which markets are controlled by cooperatives functioning within an economy, and then inelastic demand inelastic markets are then controlled by the state to make sure everyone has some kind of base level of living underneath that. That's my societal goal, right? But regardless, we just need to move away from a neoliberal base to make sure that we have a healthy superstructure, because it's toxic. It's a societal toxin. Neoliberalism. You watch my segment I did on the way in which cart narcs change. It shows how neoliberalism has changed the way people think and the way people act in a self-centered way. It's Randian objectivism. Anything that is good for oneself is necessarily good for society, when it's not, because people will engender selfishness, which creates a selfish society, and that will change as the base changes, right? That's what I believe would be the best thing moving forward. And again, I'm not condoning death threats. I'm not condoning stalking. I'm not condoning messages of a sexual nature being sent to MPs. But what I will say is that we are all subject to our material conditions. If you make people's material conditions better, that will lead to a society that doesn't treat MPs in this sort of a way, right? Again, as I said previously, if you vote to make people, to kill people through fiscal policy, people are going to get angry and they're going to direct it at you, because it was you who decided what the policies were. And if people are mean to me on Twitter, I'm like, good, it shows you that you're doing a bad job and you need to do better, right? Very, very simple. People don't get angry over nothing. Riots don't happen over nothing. People try to wave away the riots of a decade ago, the 2012 riots. They try to wave them away by saying, "Oh, this is just opportunist thugs." I'm just like, well, no. There's a reason why the riots will happen under conservative governments, because they create societal discohesion, right? There needs to be a reason why people do engage in the civil unrest that they do, and it's about fixing those material conditions that will alleviate that in the long run, and appeals to civility politics, right? It appeals to this kind of liberal idea of overall civility. It's just not going to cut the mustard at the end of the day, right? You need to fix people's material conditions, otherwise things won't get better, and you're seeing it only getting worse over time. So I guess that's the message of this video. And if you're watching in future YouTube viewers, please like, comment, and subscribe. Please do click the bell, because that will notify you when I do go live. It'll also notify when I post new videos. If you click on my name, it'll see more videos to watch. And then also link to my Twitch, which is where I stream, as well as streaming on YouTube. But if you click that Twitch and follow there, that'd be great as well as all my rest of my social medias. And thank you very much, YouTube viewers, and I'll see you on the next one. You take care.